Hello, hello. Yes. That was the longest. Yeah, everybody was sat waiting. Christine, can you hear me okay? Because I've got a new headset that I'm using. Lovely. No, all good. Yeah, they're good. Like we keep just for all the panelists, we kind of keep it relatively relaxed, relatively informal, and it's an opportunity for you to be able to sort of talk a little bit about why your school might be a little bit different or think differently in this area. So, um, Christine normally sort of runs the program, so just try not to talk too much. But obviously you'll have enough time for everybody to be able to say what they want to say.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Education Exchange. We're talking about curriculum today. So, hi Michelle, how are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. It's the first day of our Easter break, and the weather looks fabulous this week, so what's not to be happy about?
Oh, that's lovely, but you're still in the office, I can see.
I know, yeah. Head teacher's job is never done.
Exactly. Well, we've got another week to go yet, and this is probably going to be the busiest week of the term, so I'm really looking forward to it. But we've got some really lovely guests here today because we're going to be talking about curriculum. It's really, the chat and the noise and the debate about curriculum is everywhere at the moment. And I think what's lovely about our schools is that we do have the freedom and the flexibility to shape and adapt our curriculum for our pupils. And there's some wonderful practice going on in schools all over the country. And it's really lovely to be able to get our heads together, literally, head teachers together, and chat about all the things that we're doing and the reasons why as well. There is a live chat on the YouTube, so if you do have any questions for any of us throughout, then please just send your question in. But we're going to start off with, we're going to talk to Bertie first from Bedales. So Bertie, tell us what's going on at Bedales.
Stepping in is academic deputy, so involved with our curriculum and our Bedales assessed courses. We've been doing our own courses at Key Stage 4 since about 2004, and we currently have 14 BACs, and the students do 5 GCSEs. So we have the And then the rest we design ourselves. The idea being that in 2004, the feeling was that GCSEs were not fit for purpose. They didn't encourage independent thought, curiosity, and they were deeply inflexible. And while that sort of seems quite radical for the UK and England in particular, actually I've been talking to people abroad, and actually, the world create their own courses, particularly at 16. That our own courses, our heads of department are in charge of our assessment. We set some broad outlines for what they do, but I suppose our bottom line is it's got to be better than GCSE. And better is a good question to ask. What does better mean? Better preparation for A-level would be one thing, but better thinking about our stakeholders, our ethos, so more curiosity, more independence, but also thinking about how we assess and allowing different forms of assessment. So, it's coursework, it's vivas, it's controlled assessment, it's examination, it's project-based learning, it's real world learning as well. So, a huge amount of different options for colleagues. And I say to my heads of department actually that, if they haven't produced, if being at Bedales isn't the best thing that they've ever done in terms of their life as a head, could imagine. So it's about a 2 GCSE and MF into the BAC world, and we will only do maths and English language. I don't know if that's enough. Obviously, I could tell you a little bit more about the types of courses that we do. We make up. So I suppose I should just say we make up our own courses. So some of them will be very traditional, English literature, for example, but some of them will be unusual. So digital game design, or outdoor work where students can work with the sheep or blacksmith or create timber framed buildings around the school, and generally children can walk through the school and go, I built that, which is really exciting.
That's brilliant. We lost the sound a couple of times, but I'm not sure it was too much of an issue. I couldn't hear you for a little bit, but it was great mainly. Could you say, what was the reaction of your parents when you started that in 2004? Were you there at the time?
No, I wasn't. The parents said, we presented the case. I had a really good discussion with the people who were there at the time, and they presented the case exactly what the school was about. And in the English education sector, that that had not happened to them at that time. What they remembered was that in O-levels, schools created their own little consortia and created their own courses. So there was a Bedales plus 2 other schools consortia. They did an English literature O-level, and so it was normal practice before 1988 really, and before the national curriculum. Using our independence now, I think is important to say there are different ways of doing things. Actually, in the state sector, one of the where a lot of innovation is happening is in internal exclusion units or inclusion units, IAPs, where there's a huge amount of creativity, but elsewhere it's really difficult to step outside of what everyone else is doing.
That's brilliant, thank you. So along similar lines, Hugh from Latymer Upper, can we come over to you?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name's Hugh. I'm the Deputy Academic at Latymer Upper School, and similarly to Bertie, we're on a very similar trajectory. We're currently in the planning stages for September 2027, when we're going to move to a 2 GCSE model, just English and Maths GCSE, and all our other courses will be internally designed. Similarly to Bertie, we find the GCSEs, the conversations we've been having is that they aren't really fit for purpose. They promote rote learning and they don't really prepare our students sufficiently for A-level, in our opinion, and we don't find them challenging enough for our top candidates. And actually to have the opportunity to go a bit further, to explore more kind of knowledge and understanding in a sense being led by the students, that's what we want to create. We also find that sort of terminal exams, they can be quite anxiety inducing, particularly at the end of year 11, and actually they don't necessarily promote hard work all the way through a course. And to be able to have that sort of continuous assessment all the way through year 10 and year 11 is something that we're really keen to introduce. So what we're looking at doing is a kind of selection of long courses. So a bit like what Bertie is talking about, 2-year school design courses to run through years 10 and 11, and also some short courses which will last about 10 weeks. They'll be like our sixth form electives program. So these could be interdisciplinary. They could be in a particular area of like a deep dive of a particular subject that you may or may not already be doing in years 10 and 11. We're looking at opportunities to collaborate with other kind of educational bodies. We're trialing a course that we've designed in conjunction with the London Interdisciplinary School next year through our World Perspectives channel, which is what we do already with our year 10s and 11s. We have a kind of internally designed World Perspectives course. We're now going into partnership with the London Interdisciplinary School and kind of designing a 2 HPQ style course there, which we, as I say, we're trialing next year. We're looking at how we can build links with universities and employers, and we're quite excited by the opportunity not to be constrained by a syllabus and to allow the curriculum to be led by the interests of our students and our teachers, and to be able to assess more creatively, as Bertie said, using vivas, kind of presentations, posters. We still believe fundamentally in tests and exams as well, but we don't believe in them as the only form of assessment. So our colleagues are very excited about the opportunity to design new forms of assessment and think about ways of measuring the abilities of our children more than just in terminal exams.
Brilliant. Michelle, have you got any questions for Hugh?
Do you know, one of the things, like, obviously you have to be quite brave and you have to be quite bold when you're doing these curriculum changes. And I just wonder, did you have any pushback from parents or even governors when you try to do these sort of thinking out the box, creative ideas? Was there any pushback, and did you have to do much convincing, or was it pushing out an open door?
I mean, I think for us, we've always been a school that's wanted to innovate, and that's always spent a long time talking about the suitability of GCSEs. And at some point there was a time to stop talking and start doing. And I think we got to that point in September 2023 before I joined. And I think that was the moment where we decided to go for it and sort of thought, let's stop talking, let's start doing this. And if we truly believe in it, we need to do what's in the best interest of our children. The parents are very much on side with it. So we filled the school off our first choice list, having made no more offers than we have done previously for year 7 next year. So I think the market is there. I mean, it's not necessarily for everyone, but I think we've certainly found that it's been very easy to persuade parents, and we've spoken to them about the possibilities and the opportunities that these new ways of learning present.
That's brilliant. And I'm just thinking that you're in an enviable position, really. You know, knowing your school the way I know it, you are in that position where you can do that. I think some of us couldn't be so brave at the moment just because of the nature of the school we are. I'm going to go over to Simon from the Beacon School. So welcome, Simon. Can you tell us about what you're doing and maybe your thoughts on what you're hearing at the moment?
Hello everybody, yes of course, my name is Simon Detre. I'm Senior Deputy Head at the Beacon, which is a prep school, a boys prep school in Amersham in Buckinghamshire. And yeah, really identified a lot with what Bertie and Hugh said, and lots of similarities with what you said here at the Beacon. So our curriculum in years 7 and 8 is based around the PSB, which is the Pre-Senior Baccalaureate, and it's used in about 30 different schools. It is something which started off here at the Beacon, similar to what you said about, you know, GCSEs maybe not being fit for what we want them to do anymore. We had a similar approach here, and that's where the PSB has come from. What it is fundamentally about is getting our boys to think about skills as well as knowledge. And so we're talking about things like collaboration, leadership, independence, and we really want them to develop awareness of where their skills lie, what it is that they're good at, and where they could develop further. And I think the reason for that is that fundamentally we believe that the world of work which they will enter eventually will be so different for the world of work for somebody like me. I've been a teacher for nearly 25 years and probably will be for a few more years, but for them, their careers, they're very unlikely, I think, to have one career which they start off on and continue along that path for, say, the best part of 40 years of work, because the world is changing so quickly. And of course, AI and goodness knows what else mean that there will be jobs that they think they might want to do, which by the time they enter the workplace, those jobs will have become obsolete and won't exist anymore because they'll have been replaced by technology. And there'll be other jobs that haven't even been thought of, haven't even been invented yet. So they will need to be able to reinvent themselves. They will need to be able to think, okay, I'm good at this and I can apply that skill, that aptitude to this new way of working. And so for us, by trying to get them to think about that and to have that awareness of their skills from a very young age, we hope that that will better prepare them for the world of work that they will experience.
Great, thank you. Just thinking about that, because obviously being in a boys' school, and I know we were going to we could go over to Tej a bit later, but Tej, I'm going to bring you in now because this is really interesting, because I know you've got quite a few badges of honour from your school days. I mean, I've got one significant one. I think you've probably got a few more than I did. Boys' curriculum and engaging boys. Do you want to jump in now?
Thanks for sharing that publicly, Liz. Yes, I do have quite a few badges of honour that I can somewhat wear proudly. So approaching this, I've got about 300,000 thoughts on this. I'll try and sort of concise this into about 90 seconds. So really, just echoing every what everyone said. So looking at it purely from a boy's perspective, over the last sort of around 15 years, we've assessed just under 500,000 pupils in the UK around their perceptions towards their curriculum, their workload. So looking at subject demands, intellectual readiness to learn, how equipped and ready they feel in the work to get ready for work, and then the correlation to anxiety levels and mental health. It's not new news that we are facing such a huge increase in absenteeism. Attendance is dropping. I'm purely looking at this, but 70% of the schools we work with are deprived UK state schools, which, if you look at the comparisons between London and Lincolnshire as an example, and if you look at the comparisons between independent and state schools, where we're looking at how do we compete globally as a workforce, Simon, echoing your thoughts around just the evolution of AI, forgetting the last 15 years and the last 90 days, has really just changed the communication and the debate that we now need to focus on. But what's been really interesting is this question of what turns boys off, and why do, certainly from our data, why do boys get turned off faster than girls when it comes to just their ability to cope with the demands, the constraints, the anxieties of sitting exams and feeling like school is right for me, it's preparing me to be able to be successful. Thought number one. Mix that in with the just ever toxic cocktail of the sort of the tateism culture now online, and the accessibility to be able to self-diagnose on TikTok whether I have ADHD, and this extremist type of attitudes we're facing around who am I as an individual, what's my identity, and how do I win, how do I feel I'm going to succeed, how do I make money, and is school equipping me for this today? And you sort of have this perfect storm. And what we're facing, and certainly what I'm seeing from a lot of the data that we're gathering from schools, is it really comes down to two metrics. One, if they can feel like they can meet the demands in front of them, i.e. subject demands. I think the question around whether GCSEs are fit for purposes, I have my own thoughts for that. I got kicked out of 3 schools by the time I was 15. The only qualification I ever got was when I did my Viva. So Hugh, completely, obviously we have a history, Hugh, together, we work very closely together. The point around different types of assessments, the point around moving away from just rote academic learning that GCSEs do focus on, and real life context, I don't think is an option anymore. Because with this evolution of AI that's creeping in over the next kind of 3 to 5 years, and with this ever kind of increasing notion of singularity, most of the skills and the jobs that we have been preparing our young people for, especially boys, won't be an option. So unless we start to transition into contextual based learning, developing entrepreneurial mindset, looking at how behavior affects my outcomes, looking at how I can develop and understand myself more as an individual and my place in the world, and the only place I can really do that without the risk of redundancy, poverty, and getting hired or fired is in school. So we're facing this ever increasing anxiety with boys around the fact that I just don't feel I fit into school. I'm not feeling any more significant in school. So therefore I want to quit. I want to get into more vocational type learning, because I do want to, especially in some of these deprived areas that we're in. We're currently working with an academy trust in Scarborough, where the life expectancy of the child within a 5-mile radius decreases by 7 years. So when you're faced with that kind of poverty and that kind of, I'd say, financial constraint, you don't have a choice, as you would potentially do in a slightly more socioeconomically advantaged area, to be able to learn a set of skills that, one, are going to make me feel I can win in life and society, 2, are going to equip me to be able to compete in a very, very competitive world now, and number 3, which I think is most important, arguably the most important point, is help me develop a sense of identity, that the purpose of learning and the joy of learning is the greatest gift I can give to myself. And that this is the fight that I feel we're up against with the sort of extremist online agenda that's taking place at the moment, versus us as institutions, and as I can say, everyone in this room is a thought leader. Let's equip ourselves with that. Let's graduate to that on a Monday afternoon with the thought leaders here today, to be able to say this is a race against time. And I feel at the moment nationally we're getting absolutely butchered. We're losing that debate at the moment. So certainly from my perspective, the data's been, I haven't seen a change in our data for the last 10 years. This has been a sort of silent Trojan horse that now, because of the accessibility online, the extremist type of individuals you're seeing online, sort of the TikTok sound bites, which we're now seeing fuel AI on top of that. We don't have a choice but to evolve. The data's been saying it for 10 years. It is the root cause of the mental health problems that we're seeing today. COVID's made it worse. And I think, because, Liz, your point in the beginning, I think because of this recent documentary on Netflix, everyone is now beginning to talk about it. But this isn't a new problem. It's been going on for the last 10 to 15 years. And there is a clear difference between boys and girls.
Yeah, 100%. And I think if we were offering a curriculum that was exciting and stimulating, I think more children would probably want to come to school as well. So Michelle, over to you. Any questions?
I'm just absolutely captivated by what Tej is saying. I think we've got a whole webinar on all of these different points, that sort of education of the whole child. And you're so right, Tej. It's that the documentary on Netflix that's gaining lots and lots of attention. I watched it. I'm a mum of 3 boys, and I was captivated by the acting. But also, I think there's just such a bigger question to ask: why is it that our young men these days are being drawn to those toxic characters? We can't blame them necessarily for that, because there's some sort of an appeal there. And I mean, it's a bigger topic for a bigger time, another time possibly, but it's that balance between curriculum and academic rigor and the pastoral support. And we teach children exceptionally well for life outside the classroom and skills that they might need in certain areas. But I think we're really missing a trick here, because we're not teaching them basically how to be good people, how to be good members of our society. And I think that's such an important topic that's been missed. You're right as well, Tej. This isn't new. We've been doing things on extremism and county lines, and I've been a teacher nearly 25 years. For 10 plus years, we've been aware of this. So why is it that it takes a Netflix program to get everybody talking about this, because we really should have been talking about it consistently for the past 10 years.
I think what we're seeing also with that Netflix, and there was one of the I think it was the third one, when the child was in with the clinical psychologist, that was really quite chilling, because you could just see the changes in character there. And you know, and as you say, the horse is kind of bolted in a way. Hayley, we're going to come to you. What are you doing with your school? Tell us what's going on. Hayley, are you there?
So sorry, I did the classic on mute. Apologies. I'm too excited because of what I'm hearing, and yeah, this plays right into exactly why Atelier 21 is here. I mean, for all these reasons, and I agree. The recent drama, it is. I mean, I just found it breathtaking. You know, in so many ways, and really shocking. And yeah, and of course, I'm telling all of our teachers to watch it, because it's such a social commentary on where we are in this day and age right now, and what's hiding underneath. That, you know, even mothers of children in this age group don't even realise. Like myself, I've got 4 children from 20 to 9, and 3 of them are 16 and above. And yeah, pretty terrifying stuff. But Atelier is essentially been set up when we call ourselves a revolutionary response to school, because the idea being that the traditional system, for all the reasons you've already said, which I'm not going to go over, effectively I just high five everyone who said everything about what's not working well, and we'll leave it there. So our approach really is ultimately designed to make learning a relevant, meaningful and joyful experience. And that's not fluffy. There's a lot more to that. In the pursuit of genuinely presenting an educational model that's fit for children's futures rather than our past. And I think that echoes everything that's been said, is that what we experienced at school, most people I talk to don't talk that favourably about school, and that's not good enough. For the ones that do talk reasonably favourably about school, they also acknowledge that they taught them certain things to pass exams, and those things open doors. And like everybody else has said, that isn't going to cut it. And we're really seeing that, you know, the real fallout, and we see it in our school as well, because you know, many families come to us because they really want the progressive nature and the curriculum that we've designed, that I will talk more about in a minute. But also a lot of families do come to us because the traditional system hasn't worked for them, and their child isn't necessarily bright enough to get into a selective private school. So they have the means, but they can't go to other private schools, and their child needs something different. And in some ways, you know, they already feel othered, you know, like they're less than. So they end up on our doorstep saying, you know, they're on the verge of sometimes either it really has gone terribly wrong in the state system and also private system, but traditional lens, or they're on a trajectory of it looking like it's going to go wrong. And so for you know, they come to us because their child is needing something different. So there are different reasons that we attract people, but ultimately they all say the same thing, which is that the traditional model is outdated and not working, and actually very damaging. There's a lot, I think, which is quite damaging and ideologically extremely wrong as well. So our curriculum is basically, Atelier is set up, particularly in the primary model. I mean, in the secondary model, we use the International Baccalaureate. We are an MYP school, so we're a middle years programme, 11 to 16, doing the IB. And if you know a bit about that, then you'll know what that looks like. So it's very cross-curricular, it's very conceptual, and it's a fabulous, you know, it really is a fabulous approach and a great curriculum. We have pioneered in primary, I think, because we're completely curating our own approach and iterating that year on year. And so what that looks like is 5 key pillars, which is cross-curricular project-based learning, Wild Fridays, which transfers then into rewilding opportunities in the senior school through the art and design of the IB. So Wild Fridays in our school means that every child throughout our primary spends all day playing in the woods from 4 years old to 11. And we almost have no input on that. So we started, when I first started the school, I was very conscious of like, well, you know, we must appear to be making sure that there's like outdoor lessons and there's a real cross-curricular approach, and this is just as rigorous when we're out in the forest. And then we realize that that's just nonsense, and that actually the amount of what they're getting just by having literally 5 hours of uninterrupted play all throughout the year in all weathers. I mean, our parents do not thank us. We've had bills for washing machines like you would not believe. I'm joking, but genuinely it is head to toe mud. But I have a 9-year-old at the school who's going to be 10 in August, and I've been on a journey myself, because there's part of me that's going, is it okay that we're literally giving 20% of the time in our week to children up to 11 years old, nearly 12 years old, just free playing in a forest, and we're doing nothing. We've got no outcome, we've got no assessment, we've got nothing. And what I have seen in terms of, the children in our school, the level of personal responsibility, the level of love for learning, the level of sociability and social abilities, and within this democratic culture that we foster. So therefore, 99% of any relationship management governance is held in the pupil body, which means basically we're very hands-off in terms of sorting out conflicts. So they learn incredibly quickly. They have huge voice and choice about what to do at their school, about how the school works, about what we stop, start, do more of, do less of. The rules are all made up within the school community. And this is very, very closely supported by adults at every level. And there are, of course, a whole policy around unacceptable zero tolerance behaviour, which just goes straight into the adult realm to be dealt with when it needs to be, but the vast majority of it doesn't need to be. And I do think that our curriculum is a huge reason for that. So the third part of our 5 pillars is entrepreneurship. So that doesn't just mean playing at running small businesses. There's a big element of that runs throughout the school, whether it be organising events, whether it be having your own business, which is supported by the school, which has happened many times and happens and is still happening by various pupils who have side hustles, which we support at school. A big business fair where all children are involved in making products and services, and that's supported with our own curriculum sort of for about 6 weeks, as a sort of entrepreneurship is taught, as well as an opportunity to have fun with that at the end of the year. But it's also the culture, the pedagogical lens, and very much the learning power approach, the learnish and the metacognitive oracy and talk tools that we use every single day in every classroom. That is a huge part of the entrepreneurship curriculum. So it's more than just playing at business and playing at, creating ideas and creating things and going out and selling them. That's one part of it. The mindset of who am I? How do I learn to know myself, grow myself, and help others and do some good in the world? That's really what our entrepreneurship is about. And we're excited because we're about to, many of you may have heard of Big Education. They run School 360, School 21 and Surrey Square, and they're writing a book about various different pioneering models, and we've contributed to the chapter on entrepreneurship, which I'm really excited about, because we really need to raise the conversation about entrepreneurship in education, and particularly in primary. And so the 4th and 5th areas of our curriculum are academic lessons. We still teach lessons, maths and English, like everyone else. And we do workshops. So every Wednesday afternoon is dedicated to different workshops that children elect to be part of for the whole afternoon. And again, they are usually, they're either sociably minded, so they're sort of charitable pursuits, or they're art focused. So there'll be things like the arts focus. So things like radio production, podcasting, sculpture, art, cartoon making, creative writing, tapestry, and a whole world of things, and they can move around. And again, there's no specific outcome or assessment tool to this either. And what we're doing is we're referencing the national curriculum for art, design, and technology. And we're working in reverse. We're working with what children can do and want to do, and then working very hard to make sure that we are referencing the national curriculum to kind of tick the boxes. And we're very upfront about that, because if you don't put children in the driving seat of what they're doing and give them plenty of voice and choice, it's not motivating to learn. It's just not rocket science. It's just not rocket science. You know, if you give them a choice about what they want to do, they're more motivated to do it. And, you know, we can tick those boxes, particularly in primary. You know, we can tick those boxes much more easier than we think. But what we're actually doing, the most exciting thing that Atelier is doing, and I've seen that just recently, we just had a big share, which is a big family exhibition we do every term, where all the learning is kind of displayed like a museum, and it's incredible. And in particular, what we're doing in project-based learning from reception to year 3, encompassing year 3, I mean, it goes all the way to year 6, but what we're doing and the divergent nature of the emergent curriculum in maths and English, and how that's utilized and how that's being driven by the children's own really divergent gamified ideas, and how our teachers are then teaching maths and literacy through these completely immersive projects. Honestly, it's stuff I've not seen, and I've been following Reggio Emilia and the Reggio Emilia approach, and we've been inspired by that for 15 years at my other my nurseries and my school. This is groundbreaking stuff. And so I think, you know, the conversation between everyone else was saying about courses at 16, post 16, to find these, you know, genuinely relevant ways of creating assessment programs, it's the same conversation, because what we need is motivated young people who can think for themselves, be curious, be imaginative, be joyful in their learning, so that they love learning for life. And then they will be about how to develop themselves.
Christine, I would say I haven't visited all the schools or worked with all the individuals on this panel, but what I would say is I've visited Hayley's school, and it truly is an inspirational place to visit. Hayley and her team really do this sort of out of the box thinking, put the child in the centre, much like the rest of the panellists do as well. And I would encourage anybody to have a little look on the website or go visit, because Hayley's always welcoming people to come and have a look at what's happening. Christine, I have a question for the rest of the panel, if that's okay, and you can pick who to direct it to. But we've still got, or do you want me to hold on to that, and do you want to go to Francesca first?
Yeah, let's go to Francesca, then we can fire questions. That'd be great. Francesca.
Okay.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Hayley, your school sounds incredible. I would definitely love to come and visit. So I am the executive head at Auckland College in Liverpool. And I guess what makes us so unique is that we are open from 7:30 till 6 p.m, 51 weeks of the year. So that's a lot of curriculum, a lot of different curriculum as well. So we proudly serve our local community of working parents. We welcome international pupils from around the world. And I think, you know, like, I won't repeat what everybody has said, but yes, the evolution of curriculum design is crucial, absolutely. But I think equally important is ensuring that our curriculum really reflects the interconnected world that we live in. And I would say global education is really at the heart of what we aim to achieve here at Auckland, exposing our pupils to diverse perspectives, global challenges, and like many of you have already said, you know, equipping them with the skills needed for future careers, and so that they can be good citizens, responsible global citizens as well. I think it's really important that, you know, we appreciate that we've got a rich mix of cultural backgrounds, you know, and our curriculum, both our academic curriculum, our enhanced curriculum, our out of hours care curriculum, we aim in all 3 of those to develop cultural intelligence, empathy, that broader world view, really. You know, and by doing that, we're supporting our children, we're supporting our young people in their ability to navigate complex global issues, contribute positively to society, and essentially be good people. You know, I think we've learned from the past, you know, and you know, it's becoming more widely accepted that the focus purely on academic outcomes no longer serves the evolving needs of our young people. We're not effectively preparing them for the future. It's not just about knowledge acquisition. It's about developing their critical thinking, their creativity, their adaptability, their digital literacy as well. You know, and making sure that we're actually listening to our young people. Are we listening to parents? You know, what do they want? What do they want on the curriculum? And I think for us here at Auckland, we proudly champion both pupil and parent voice. We actively consult with our stakeholders to shape our curriculum offer. And that is a continuous process. That isn't something that just happens at the start of the year. You know, it's regular feedback, asking children, what do you want to learn? What do you feel you need to improve? Asking parents on a weekly basis, you know, what do you want taught in school? What do you feel your children need to learn? You know, Junior Duke of Edinburgh, STEM, engineering, but teaching that from 3 years old, teaching that all the way down the school, you know, and actually exposing pupils to a curriculum that meets their needs, meets their aspirations of not just them, but of their families as well, so that we have an educational experience that doesn't finish at the end of a term. You know, like I say, we're open 51 weeks of the year. It's continuous provision, it's enhanced provision, and it's provision that is relevant and reflective of the community that we serve. You know, it's effective for today's classrooms, but it's also future-proof. It's engaging, it's accessible. You know, when you run the numbers, we're about 30% cheaper than our competitors. I mean, I've got 4 children myself, all 4 of my children go to the school. And if I was to pay for breakfast club, after school club, holiday club, actually, by sending my children to Auckland, I'm actually saving money. So my pupils, my children, you know, I get an education 51 weeks of the year. You know, at 6 o'clock, we actually have to say to the children, you need to go home now. It's 6 o'clock. You know, have a lovely holiday. Oh, but miss, I'll be in next week, so I'll see you on Monday. And I think that is reflected in our attendance as well, which is during the summer holidays, during all of the school holidays, over 90% of our children come into school. And that's a choice. You know, that's because they enjoy school. It's because they're happy. You know, and I think that is the most important measure of any curriculum and of any school. Are the pupils happy? Do they want to be there? We are looking to the future, collaborating with industry so that we can embrace technology. We embrace AI to streamline our operations, to improve our efficiencies, but most importantly, to deliver a first-class value for money education. For me personally, it's about instilling purpose. It's about instilling motivation in our pupils beyond exams, embracing technology, promoting digital well-being, nurturing not just academic success, but that personal growth, that resilience, so that our pupils are prepared for a technology-driven world, prepared to be good global citizens. And you know, I could talk all day, but I'll stop there. And if anybody's got any questions, obviously, I'm happy to answer those.
I must admit, listening to what I didn't know what we were going to hear today. You know, I've gone to this totally blind. You've all volunteered to come forward. We are hearing the most amazing stuff. And as someone said earlier in the panel that, you know, all thought leaders, I mean, that's probably why we're here, because we are disrupting education. And I know, Michelle, you've got a really good idea by throwing questions out. So panel, while Michelle tells us what her question is, can you think of a question you want to throw out to a particular member of the panel? But we'll go to Michelle first. What's your question, Michelle, and who would you like it to answer? Who would like to answer it?
Oh, I don't mind. I'm happy for somebody who's got a really strong opinion on it. But Do you know what I'm picking up from listening to all of this is the huge disconnect between what we're teaching in schools and what children need to know. And it's great to hear all of these individuals on the call talking about how they've tried to bridge that gap. But I really question the curriculum. Why is it that we have this curriculum that's become such a memory test, and those that have a great memory are going to do quite well? In my school, all my kids have got SEN. They're not great memory, they're not great at memorizing things. So I suppose, right, I will pick somebody just to make this easier. I'll go to Bertie. Why is there such a disconnect between what typically the majority of schools are doing and what they need to know for life?
It's a good question. For me, that it's a root in power. That once I understand government need to measure, but in order to measure, you have to streamline and standardize and make sure that everyone is doing the same thing, which is why in 1988 you had a national curriculum, you reduced the number of exam boards, and therefore you could then compare and contrast across the country, and then you could say that you were measuring standards and raising standards. And ultimately what's happened is that then we've deprofessionalized colleagues who no longer are involved in creating their own curricula and thinking about what's right for their local area. And instead you have a sort of a move towards centralization, and that centralization is really slow. And it sees things in ways that are, I suppose it's become a factory process, hasn't it? And that and then the things, of course, that you can measure are the easy things to measure. They're not the difficult, subtle things like creativity. How do you measure creativity? But you can measure the number of 4s, the number of 7s, and the number of 9s really easily. So then the system gets skewed by a need to control and therefore a need to measure. And then you lose contact with the individual students and the individual communities. So for me, that's the disconnect, because we're seeing it as a linear process, as a transactional process, and we're not measuring the important things. I think that's a really interesting thing that I think it's in Denmark, where you have to say you have to measure happiness, but it doesn't matter how you measure it. So you can't have league tables, but you just have to think about how you measure happiness. Is that increasing? What's going on, and for me, the sooner we can get away from comparison. We know that as human beings, comparing is awful. We need to get away from high stakes assessment. I mean, at 16, it's ridiculous to have high stakes assessment. Very few other countries do it. And think of a teenage brain. It's completely insane. So I think it's that combination for me that is the problem. And I think it's really exciting when we're hearing people talking about engaging with their children, engaging with their local communities, thinking about what you can do. If you create your own assessments, you can go out to your local community and say, okay, what skills does industry need here from our students, and you can create a curriculum around it.
See, as we've got you there, thank you for that response. What's your question, and who do you want to divert it to? Bertie, do you have a question for someone on the panel?
Sorry, could you give me a moment and I'll think of a question?
Yeah, absolutely. So Simon, let's go
Christine,
to you.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, Hayley, go on.
No, it's Michelle. Sorry. Tej has just sent me a message to say that he's got a point on this, and I just wondered if we could link it to what Bertie's just been saying.
Yeah,
Tej.
definitely. Yeah, so especially what Bertie was just saying around this point around assessment, I think going back into why we've got such a standardized and streamlined route, again, looking at purely from a state background, and slowly kind of seeping into an independent schools background, I think we've entirely missed or ignored this whole notion on assessment and how relevant that assessment is as a qualifier metric to life skills and workforce readiness, and to be able to grow as an individual. Equally, I think the second point in all of this, and this may be a little controversial, is I think the debate necessarily is not whether math, English, or GCSEs are good or bad. I think these are still fundamental skills that our young people need. And you're talking to someone who failed at 15, then sat a Viva and had to do statistical regression analysis and needed a basic set of math skills to be able to do that. I think the notion really has to be sort of twofold. One, we need a more evolved way of measuring pupil readiness. So looking at entrepreneurial mindset, looking at behavior, looking at growth mindset, which is sort of what we've developed as an organization, and using that as a prerequisite. So for example, I took 20,000 students to the regression analysis, and we achieved a 96% accuracy on predicting GCSE results based on non-GCSE metrics: mindset, approach, entrepreneurialism, and attitudes towards working. So I don't think we need to move away from this mass exodus to exams, GCSEs. I think we need to better equip young people on how to deal with the stress that exams bring, because it's the trigger. And unless they deal with that, they're going to have to deal with it later on in life. Number two, following really on Bertie's point, that it's not necessarily the examination process that's flawed. It's right for some pupils and wrong for others. But we've worked with pupils who are attendance is below 20%, have got learning difficulties, single family homes, and extreme poverty, and hate school. And within 6 months, if you teach them how to learn, love school because they feel like they can win again. So if we can begin to start to teach pupils how to learn effectively while supplementing that with, so exactly, Hayley, what you and Francesca have both said around just alternative approaches to education, and move away from this sort of fixed mindset that GCSE equals a good education, because it doesn't. I think we can begin to stand the chance to compete globally. So really two fronts from my perspective, Michelle. I think it's slightly dangerous to move completely away from standardized exams and testing, because we do provide a free education for millions of pupils, which is a huge achievement, but it's not fit for purpose anymore. So in order to get it fit for purpose, do we change the entire system, or do we get the clientele in that system more fit and able and ready to be able to succeed in that system? My thought process has always been the latter, while really significantly upgrading how we assess and the metrics. And I think my final point in all of this, and echoing everything, especially again from what the panelists said, we have ignored pupil voice for far too long. And that's the reason we're in the mess that we're in. Michelle, the conversation we had earlier, we have a decline in male strong leadership, in female strong leadership in the UK. We don't talk about it. We have a chip on our shoulder around entrepreneurialism. We don't like to talk about achievement, about success. We tend to suppress more than we congratulate and accelerate progress. So therefore you have this whole wave of this post-COVID generation that have been literally sitting on their phones for 3 years on TikTok, getting completely brainwashed, going, actually, why would I do double math when I'm made to feel completely like I don't fit in, I don't get the purpose of it, and I've got this guy on TikTok saying, here's how I can win at life. Who am I going to follow? So it's sort of an echo around get our pupils fit and ready to thrive in a system, irrespective of how fit for purpose the system is, because then they can thrive in anything. And number two, we cannot ignore pupil voice anymore, parent voice anymore, at all. I'll stop because I'll keep talking.
I know you're very passionate about it, and we can pick this up. We've got a conference coming up, which I'll talk about later. But Hayley, you've got your hand up.
Okay. Right, I'm going to try and be really quick because I've got 2 key points to make. Okay, first of all, adding on from what was said, what's been said, the conversation has been so stimulating. I've lost the point where it was relevant, but it is relevant. Is that so I need to look up the detail of this, but I've been told that the PISA, the PISA tables, the global kind of educational pitting countries against each other results tables, they are, they're measuring academic excellence and academic ability and attainment. And they have recently developed a league tables for countries measuring creativity. And the UK government was given the option to take part in this PISA league table, and we opted out. And I need to understand a bit more about it. But for me, that's so important. That's basically our government saying, we know we're going to do terrible at this, so we're not even going to be on the playing field. And that is, you know, and it's kind of not known or talked about, which is shocking. The second thing, but I do admit this is very anecdotal, and I don't have the good detail. I need to look it up. The other thing I wanted to say was what Tej was just saying about pupil voice. I genuinely, my genuine rationale for why we're seeing such horrendous levels of absenteeism, particularly in secondary, and I feel there's a huge area in girls 11 to 16. I'm sure it happens with boys as well, but I'm personally seeing 11 to 16 is you know, crazy. It's really seems to be very prolific, and it's almost like, because if you think generationally, they're not under threat of violence anymore. So back when we used to be able to apply, you know, sort of violence and verbal violence to peoples in a way that we don't do anymore, you know, young people were too scared to say no, or too scared not to go in, and just, you know, at home that wouldn't have been supported. Now your parents are championing their children, and teachers want to, but schools as a whole and government are not. And so actually the young people are going, what will really happen to me if I just say no? And ultimately they vote with their feet, and they just go, actually, I'm just going to say no.
I think we're seeing a lot of that now. That is definitely, we're seeing those threads come through, probably not in our schools, but in other schools. But I'm going to Simon. Simon, have you got a question for any member of the panel?
Well, I guess my question is, where do we go from here? Because it's been a really enlightened discussion, and I think, you know, the people on this panel are all very much in agreement that change is needed. But the reality is that we are about to enter the annual cycle again of thousands and thousands of 16-year-olds and older going off to do their Easter revision for their GCSE and other exams. You know, then they will return to school in a few weeks. They'll go into those exam halls. They'll write, regurgitate as much as they possibly can, mostly by hand. And then a few weeks after that, they'll drop most of those subjects and never study them again. And it's more than 30 years since I took my GCSEs, but in that time, the system hasn't really changed. It's still very recognizable. It's still very much the same. And so I suppose my question is, what can we who understand that change is needed, who realize that this is not the way to do it anymore, what can we do about that? How can we raise awareness of that? How can we make things better?
Right. Okay. So Bertie, any question? Anything on what Simon's just said to us? Can you hear me, Bertie?
I think if I had the answer to that, then in a way that you know, it would almost be sort of irrelevant to be here, because we'd be out doing it. Where do we go from here? I mean, my feeling is actually that if we could release some of this, our state sector colleagues from some of the limitations that they get given. Why 8 subjects? Why not 5? And then also really think about some of those, and allowing and somehow reducing the fear in the system. I think we're really driven by fear, and the students are feeling that as well. And the high stakes performative for children, high stakes performative for heads. I mean, any head taking a risk in the state sector, you know, you're just going to you risk losing your job really quickly. And I think some of the for my sins, I did in my masters, I did a discourse analysis on all the education white papers since 1944. And what was really interesting was that teachers are set up as heroes, but also told that we are failed heroes. And told that the thing that we do is so important that we will save the planet, save the country, make it wealthy, and yet continually told that we're bad at it. And I think somehow the discourse around teaching, albeit we believe that it's fundamentally really important, we have to extract the fear from the system, and allow colleagues and allow the students to enjoy learning and to enjoy teaching. And I don't know how we do that, but it seems fun. That, that at its core is it's fear that's driving everything.
Put it in a nutshell there. I really do think that we've got such a task. All schools across this country are different. We've got different pupil populations, needs, wants, right across all sectors as well, you know, and I wouldn't want to be in any government position where I had to try and put that right. I don't think anybody here would, because I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all answer here at all. But as you've just said, we've got to make school exciting, engaging, preparing young people for the future so that they want to be in school, so that those pupils are in school, and that we prepare a workforce for the future. Now, we're running out of time now, so the last thing I'm going to talk about is, and I really do hope that our panellists can make it here, to LVS Ascot. On April the 30th, we're holding a curriculum conference where we're going to pick up these themes. I mean, while everyone's been talking today, I've been making notes because we've got a number of strands we could look at here. So we could look at all the different models. We look at the pressures that different schools are under. Some of the schools here are selective. I know our parents will be looking at the league tables and the exam results, and we've got to bring children through the door, but we've still got to prepare them for the future with all these amazing ideas here. So if you're on our panel, we'd love to see you again on the 30th of April, and I'll email you after this session as well. But anybody who's picking this up on YouTube, there is a QR code to sign up. It's also, oh, there you go, it's just appeared. Wonderful, fantastic. That's the QR code to sign up. There's more on LinkedIn, there's more on social media. We would love to see as many people who are in charge of schools and curriculum to be with us on the 30th of April so that we can share ideas and see how we can support each other with bringing a curriculum for the future. So we're just coming to the end. Michelle, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Gosh, I feel a little bit overwhelmed, if I'm honest. There's so much to think about. And I just think it's wonderful that we've got this opportunity. There's so much good things. There's so many good things going on across not just the independent sector, but the state sector as well. And I think it's really important that our government and our ministers that are able to make decisions when it comes to curriculum reform and changes, they listen to the people that are actually working with the young people and the parents. And we've got a real opportunity to make a curriculum that's fit for purpose. And that has massive benefits, not just for the age that they are just now, but benefits for society, making sure that these jobs for the future are filled. And yeah, it's been really uplifting listening to the individuals on this call today.
It's the first time that many of us have spoken. I think I've had a conversation with Tej before, but the rest of you, I've never met you before, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much for taking part today, and I really do hope to hear from you again very, very soon. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.